Tokyo Game Show is happening as we speak, and Konami has a massive presence at this year's show. Just look at how awesome their booth looks. These pictures are all from press and fans lucky enough to attend this year's TGS, and as always, the links to the sources of these images will be in the description box below. Their booth is fully decked out with security cameras, actors dressed up as enemy guards patrolling the catwalk above, and a full-on Metal Gear Rex display. Attendees were also able to sample the Master Collection for around 15 minutes each, with some press outlets even getting the permission to record some of their gameplay, which is the source for quite a few of the updates we're going to go over today. But first, let's take a look at some of the info Konami has recently released. Konami has provided Steam with the minimum and recommended system requirements for the PC version of the Master Collection. You can find them in the Steam listing of the Master Collection, but I'll go over them with you quickly. The minimum requirements are as follows. Windows 10 for your OS. For CPU, an Intel Core i7-3770 is the bare minimum, as well as 8GB of RAM. For your GPU, an NVIDIA GeForce GTX 760 or an Intel HD Graphics 4000. Looks like you'll need 1GB of available space for storage. You got your sound card information, your additional notes. Now moving over to the recommended side. OS, same thing, Windows 10. For your CPU, an Intel Core i5-7600 is recommended, at least 16GB of RAM, and an NVIDIA GeForce GTX 980 is recommended. Everything else is the same, 1GB of storage, all that good stuff. I think it's safe to say that you're going to be able to run this collection and these games on a PC from within the last decade or so, which is good news for a lot of people. Next up, we have a small update on probably the most controversial topic surrounding the Master Collection, which are obviously the resolution and frame rates we will be playing these games at. If you go over to the Master Collection website, there is a new section near the bottom of the page that you can expand, in which you can see all about the output resolutions and targeted frame rates for the three main games. The left side is dedicated to Metal Gear Solid 1 and how they expect it to run on each of the consoles the game will be available on. As you can see, the maximum output resolution for nearly all of the platforms is 1920 by 1080, except for the Nintendo Switch in handheld mode. Now you'll notice there are numbers with asterisks before them. We'll get into what those footnotes mean in just a second. Moving over to the right side of the table, these output resolutions and targeted frame rates are for MGS2 and MGS3. You'll notice once again that the games will be running at 1920 by 1080 on every platform except the Switch in docked mode. However, the frame rate is where it gets interesting. You'll notice that the frame rate for the Switch in both handheld and docked mode are set to a targeted 30 FPS. Now why is that? I have no clue. Personally, that doesn't deter me from wanting to pick up the Switch version on top of the PC and PS5 versions, but I know for some of you, resolutions and frame rate are deal breakers when they don't meet your expectations, which is why I want to make sure you're all as informed as you can be before making any decisions on platforms you plan to purchase the Master Collection on. Before we move on to the next bit of news, let's quickly go over those footnotes at the bottom of the page. The first states that the original versions of the games, meaning the PlayStation version of Metal Gear Solid and the HD Collection versions of Metal Gear Solid 2 and Metal Gear Solid 3, have been upscaled to run at 1080p. The second is in regard to frame rates, and it basically states that the frame rates you're seeing listed might dip below the targeted maximum frame rates in certain portions of the games. Nearly every version of Metal Gear Solid 2 and Metal Gear Solid 3 that have been released have had frame rate dips. Just keep that in mind. Next up, we have some good news, once again from the horse's mouth, and it pertains to the PS4 version of the Master Collection Volume 1. Konami has stated that the recently announced PS4 download version of the Master Collection will be releasing at the same time as all of the other platforms. Initially, they stated that the PS4 version would be released at a later undisclosed time. However, it seems plans have changed, and fans that are planning to pick up the last-gen version of this collection can now do so at the same time as everyone else. My wallet is crying at the fact that this is yet another version I need to pick up on October 24th. Next up, Famitsu was one of the press outlets allowed to record some of their gameplay from the event. They have uploaded a nearly 5-minute video going through each of the games very briefly. There isn't a whole lot of new information to be gathered from these videos, but here are some of the things I found worth noting. For MGS1, we get our first real look at the Master Collection menu. I think it's really cool and sleek looking, and I also think it's really cool that they have music playing and it isn't just a static menu like the HD Collection. The game seemingly looks better overall than the IGN footage we saw a while back from the Master Collection event they held in LA. I don't know, to me personally, the textures look a little bit better, but it's really hard to say for sure from just YouTube footage. And finally, save states seem to be present on this collection as an alternate way to save your progress over saving via codec call. This image comes from Twitter user @dwenekusu, sorry if I butchered your name, and since it was in Japanese, I ran it through an image translator, and it definitely seems like a save state system. This is really good news for speedrunners and anyone who wants a way to practice certain sections of a game, such as boss fights. I will definitely be taking advantage of this feature. MGS2 also has a few interesting things we can take a look at. Starting off with the title splash screen. Those who are intimately familiar with the HD collection and the changes made from the original versions of MGS2 will notice right away that the title is much closer to the original PS2 title splash over the HD collection version. Twitter user HighTies has an excellent comparison image with all three versions side by side. You'll also notice something I went over in one of my videos, and that is the rain textures that were omitted in the HD collection. Judging by the footage from Famitsu, it seems like Konami has brought them back, or at the very least, made the game look closer to the original in this regard as well. The game also looks a bit closer in terms of brightness and contrast over the HD collection version. For some reason, the HD collection had this dark filter over it that was removed for the Legacy collection. Users HighTies and Outsider Snake or @Kuwabara357 have great comparison shots of the two. Metal Gear Solid 3 didn't really have anything noteworthy in my opinion, other than some things loading a bit quicker in the menu. For example, in the Famitsu footage, the player is shown going through camouflage options and switching out their currently equipped camo. In this footage, I am switching my camo on the HD collection on PS3, and it is noticeably slower. Keep in mind that it's not a one-for-one comparison, as I am switching a different camo out that you obtain much later in the game. Either way, if you want to watch the entirety of the Famitsu footage, the link will be in the description along with their impression of the Master Collection. Keep in mind this article is in Japanese, so if you want to read it, you'll need to find a way to translate it. Lastly, I just want to say that it's been really cool to see the Metal Gear franchise being talked about online again, and it's also been really cool to see Konami put some actual effort behind the franchise. Forgetting all that stuff about base resolutions and output resolutions and maximum frame rates for just a second, it's cool to see them put some effort into something such as their amazing TGS booth, or their little mini Metal Gear Solid anime, of which they've released a couple of episodes for. If you haven't seen that yet, they are linked in the description box below. They're pretty funny, they're just short little animated movies. It's just been cool to see new Metal Gear related material circulating online from the source itself, from Konami themselves. As of the making of this video, we are just a short month away from the release of the Master Collection, and regardless of how that collection turns out, I personally am having so much fun releasing Metal Gear content for you all, and I am super thankful for all of the support that you've been showing me thus far. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.